And here we are. First, the overall shape is pretty spot on. You don't really have too many shaping issues with die-cast metal or resin models anymore. The technology has gotten so good that it's usually a non-issue, and I can definitely say that for this particular model. The overall paint on this model is very good. Now, obviously there's going to be a lot of comparisons to this model versus the one from Spark, because I did a video on the Spark version of this earlier this year. Not the exact same car, but basically the same livery. And so let's take the metallic paint for example. It is very well applied. It looks very good. And I would say it's pretty close to what Spark's paint quality is. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some parts where there's some overspray. There are parts where some of the paint is actually lighter than other parts, so that means there's just a little thinning of the paint on certain parts of the model. But you really would have to pay close attention to notice those things. The wheel detail is pretty good. You do have most of the elements that you would expect out of a replica Formula One car. Now, the red portion of this on the Spark model actually had the same paint that was applied onto the body of this car, this metallic red. On this one, it's red. It's not metallic at all, so you don't have the reflections or the glossiness that you had with the Spark. So that is a little bit different. The middle hub is very well done. The bolt is very good as well. There isn't really a sense of separation, but it's very acceptable. I think what helps a lot is the fact that the bolt on the hub has that color on there, which designates which side the wheel goes on, because the other side is blue, and that's what those are for, from my understanding anyway. But yeah, and the script on the tires is very good, so good job. On the front of this model, you do have the elements of a very well executed wing. Now, something that is unique to this particular model, and I'm not necessarily saying it's a positive, is that this one, Solido decided not to use any type of texture on the carbon fiber bits. So there's nothing there. It's just a shiny, glossy black. And the actual car is definitely not like that. Now, what I can say is it does look good. It's just not accurate to the real thing. In the back of the model, you do have all of the elements that you would expect out of a Formula One replica car. You do have the LED that's in the back there. You have an exhaust, and the exhaust is all blacked out, which on the real car it's not. Not sure on why they made that choice, but it just looks like it's molded with the rest of the black elements that are back here. So I find that a little interesting. Let's take a closer look at this model. As you can see, as I mentioned, there is no carbon fiber print anywhere to be found on this, no pattern. You do have the attachment points of the 3-element wing, and they're painted in a metallic paint to mimic as if they're metal pieces. They are not. The tires are semi-scrubbed. They almost look like they are, as we call in the racing world, sticker tires, fresh tires that never actually ran or been scrubbed. But it's almost like an in-between. So that's an interesting take. All of the decals are very nicely done, and they are actual decals. The outline for the decals is actually very, very difficult to see, which is a good thing. But as you can see, they're all clear, very legible. Focusing on the driver, the helmet is very well executed. You have all the information that you'd like to see. You have the Valtteri Bottas script there on the back. Steering wheel is well appointed. Not a ton of color there, but you can see there you have the Alfa Romeo script on the wheel, which is nice. There's a nice blue hue that looks like the LED screen, so that's a very nice touch. Zooming in on the driver, you can see a very well executed helmet, as I mentioned before, and there is no seat belt to be found on the driver. And then there's also, on this sample, unfortunately, it looks like some of the paint got scratched off. The venting on the side are not true vents, but it does have the pattern. It's a closer look at the exhaust. And then the side, which again is this glossy painted ground effect. Also look at the wheels. Nicely executed. Let's move to the side there. Just a little differentiator there. The piece right here, that's usually metal, and this one it's a plastic piece. So scripting on the side, that ground effect, which again is just a glossy mold with no pattern at all, but it still looks very good. It's the front element. All of the push rods and A-arms. To move to the back, there's the exhaust again. No separation at all in the back. It's all plastic, but it does contain all of the essential elements that you would see on a real car. The other thing about everything being black and glossy, it does make it hard, even with this light on the suspension, it does make it hard to see everything. And then finally the rear wing, which again, this should be a separate piece, and it's not for the DRS. The C2 Alfa Romeo by Solido models. Now to my conclusions. Well, I hope you enjoyed that review of that 2022 C2 chassis driven by Valtteri Bottas. This Alfa Romeo F1 car is beautiful. If you are a casual collector of Formula One cars, this is definitely one to get. The paint on it is spectacular. It is very, very well laid down. There are some parts where it thins out a little bit, but you'd have to really look hard to actually notice something like that. The decals are very nice. It's a nice model. Again, if you are a casual collector, if you're somebody who's looking for something that looks almost like the real thing with tons of detail, this is not the model for you. The one you want to get is the Spark. Now, that being the case, you should definitely take a look at either one if you're kind of in the middle of the road. And I'll give you an example. So here is the quick turntable spin of the Solido model. Now, let's take a look at the Spark. Now, what you can see there is definitely a difference. The textures, the colors, everything on that Spark is so much more crisp and concise. And you are paying for that. The Solido model is less than $100. You can get this at $69.95 at most retailers. That is in US dollars. The Spark model, it is $220. So you're paying a hefty increase for a model that has more detail. Is it worth that much more? That's personal preference. But what I can say is that if you are somebody who wants an exact car, then yes, you're going to get the Spark. If it was me, I would get the Spark because that's just the way I am. But that is nothing to put down about that Solido model. It is a beautiful model for what it is, and it's a bargain for the price. It is a great bargain. If I was to put a value on this model, I would definitely give it $2. Reason being, you have that Spark out there will definitely grow in value because it is a very high detailed, and Spark is the only one that's making the 1/18 scale with that level of detail. The Mini Champs, if there is one, would come in close, but Spark right now is killing it with their F1 cars. And yes, I do, personal preference, do think they are better looking, more detailed than the Mini Champs for now. Please like and subscribe. That is the best way I'm going to know you're enjoying these videos. Dimitri, pay attention to the end of the video and you get what you want. I appreciate your time. I'll see you next time.